School.
So, school throughout the 1970s and indeed the early 80s was a cauldron of all things detrimental and hideous. I fucking hated school. It was detrimental in its curriculum and the oppressive teaching methods that suppressed anything remotely artistic or left field that didn't fit the narrative to the shut the fuck up and get your head around being a worker bee for the ruling classes. Makes you proud to be British, sir. Hideous, I say, because them borderline wannabe dictators employed to crack the whip and enforce upon us their absolute disregard for our fresh, unpolluted minds. Yeah. They used to... honestly, I've had it out with a few teachers that I've met in recent years, and they just say, it was a different time, Ian. Fuck off. From the off, I hated school with a passion. If it wasn't the teacher beating you down, and often some of them even fucking beating you up, it was the bullies you had to deal with. Now, I learned very early on that if you make people laugh, you'll generally get away with shit. And as was the way with my entire and abruptly ended school life. But more of that later. And regarding humour, that has served me well, I have to say. My favourites early on were people like Dick Emery, Stanley Baxter, no relation, Mike Yarwood, Frank Spencer. What kid of my generation didn't go around shouting, "Oh, Betty, the cat's done a whoopsie"? Yeah, that was Frank Spencer. And latterly, the comedic genius, way ahead of his time, Kenny Everett. I used to love him. I would mimic him. I'd do routines, mannerisms and voices to friends, parents, any fucker who would listen and give me time of day. And I'd took this armour to school, and fuck me, was the school nothing but a stage. And it was my stage. I wasn't there to learn. No. So I was about seven or 8 years old when family Baxter, we upped sticks and moved to a village called Winterton, which is some 8 miles or so from Scunthorpe. But hey, what a world of difference. So we'd left the concrete, diverse graveyard of ambition that was Westcliff, and that's not detrimental to it, no, not when you see what's coming at that time. And we swapped it for a well-established rural oasis. Yeah. I say swapped, still cracks me up this, because back then, I don't know whether they still do it or not, the council had a policy that you could just swap your house with another council property tenant, which I can't believe that some fuckwit moved into our old estate house in Salisbury Close from this large, nicer gaff with a cellar. Yeah, 100-foot plus garden, complete with fruit trees, and a fucking pigsty left over from where? Because everyone had pigs and shit then. Which, the pigsty, that was obviously commandeered as my den. Yeah, stroke wanking shed. Although, looking back, that was how it got its makeover some years later. As I say, I was only around 8 years old. And although I was a bit of a stunner and a cutie, I was still a tad young to be performing self-gratification. But not through lack of trying. So if that wasn't good enough, to top this utopia off, we were surrounded by fields and farms, flowing rivers, and not far away, the icing on already over-egged pudding, oh yeah, mines. Wow! A vast network of abandoned cranes, vehicles, sheds and shit, railway buildings, railways, and lakes left over from the mining of the ore from the steelworks. And an abundance of never seen before by me, wildlife. Yeah, wildlife prior to moving to Winterton consisted of waiting and watching the pissed up neighbours coming home after a bender at the Desert Rat while the wife shouted out the window and gave him a good hiding and lob shit at him. It was a boyhood dream right on your doorstep. I was, and still am, very fond of Winterton, and regularly take a trip down memory lane or just catch up with lifelong mates. Yeah. And on the subject of mates, I was to share this wilderness with my first best mate, Jason Peace. Now, Jace lived about 10 doors away, and likewise similarly came from a family of 4, albeit 2 lads from John, the dad, and Sam and Darren from Jenny, the stepmom. Yeah. Jace was the same age as me, same year. We met when I was kick-ass in a ball just outside the front garden, and he asked, "Gives a kick, mate?" And so began a lifelong friendship. Now, friendship was a relatively new thing for me at that point because although we'd grown up surrounded by loads and loads of people in Westcliff, by the nature of the volume of people, it was more of like a fly-by-friend system. You know, there were 6 closes there, so you'd hang around with one from that close one, then you'd fall out, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, it's just you two now in a village. So, me and Jace, a like-minded kinship, yeah. Or a pair of proper fucking raggy-ass tearaway-ins. God, you could get away with out back then. Because even if it was pissing down or a fucking blizzard blowing at you, you were out the house and you didn't come back till the streetlights came on. That was law. It was a licence to do what you wanted. Go where you wanted. Do anything, yeah. Just as long as you didn't bring the police to the door. But if you did do, good luck with that fucker. So it's 1976, and what a memorable year. The Ford Fiesta was launched. The Damned released New Rose, which was marketed as the first punk rock single. Sticking with punk, the Sex Pistols swear on live TV. Wow! Concorde makes its first commercial flight. All of which meant absolutely fuck all to me. No. For me, 76 was a belter. What a summer. It was scorchio every day, record highs, nighttime as well, sweating your nads off. Or at least that's how I remember it. We spent every waking moment down the mines, honing our, you'd call it bushcraft skills, I guess, nowadays. But it actually consisted of setting fire to shit, breaking stuff, and getting chased on a regular basis by the steelwork security blue Jeep. Blue Jeep's coming, do one. The mines were a special haven. Oh, it was so good, honestly. As a under 10 at that point, you can imagine anything down there and be anything. If you wanted to fly, you pretended you could fly. You know what I mean? If you pretended you were French, you're a weirdo. But no, it was a world of make-believe. In hindsight, it was an accident waiting to happen at any fucking given moment. There was so much abandoned stuff down there that we should not have been arsing about with. But thanks to luck rather than judgment, nothing untoward occurred. No, we just got away with it. But there must have been something in the air. Well, there was a lot of bloody hot air that summer because Dad left Steelworks to become a driving instructor. Yeah. My sister Anne, she left to join the army. This was all cool, but it did mean that Colin, second eldest, he got the big bedroom to himself, didn't he? Arse. I still got no relief from cohabiting with khaki-footed Kev. But more importantly, Dad began his next transition. There. Which, it was slightly reincarnated, to be honest. A rejuvenated version of the old Warner. Now, prior to me being born, Dad went through a deeply religious phase where God, you know, Jesus' dad, well, he told him to go to Delhi. Yeah. No, not like shop. No. Just run that by me again, God. You want me to go to Delhi in India to preach the Bible. Brilliant. Crack on, I'm off. Anyway, it was an odd calling for a father of 4 from Scunthorpe, but far, far less embarrassing for the said 3 children, my siblings, who were made to carry his homemade pulpit, constructed, I'm not shitting you, out of scrap wood, to the local precinct to spout his bollocks about the mythical sky fairy, to ranting drunken Celts leaving the desert rat. So, obviously, he was already slightly susceptible to the God Squad nonsense from some years earlier. But it felt different. Okay, this was the birth of the Pentecostal church. It even sounds wrong, doesn't it? So I guess the modern day version would be the New Life Church, which, to be honest, it's just the same shit with a different name, in my opinion. But Dad took it a mad step beyond. Mad step beyond! Oh yeah. So he gathered around him a flock of absolute fuckwits that, truthfully, it was nothing short of a cult. That's exactly what it was. I witnessed him baptising. Just run that by me again.
Oh, you bastard! I can't swim!
I witnessed my dad baptising people in the River Ancombe. Because that's normal behaviour, isn't it? We used to go to the followers. I'll call them that out of respect. We used to go to the followers' houses for meetings, so we always got palmed off with whatever kids they had. But by the end, you had to hold hands in a circle, while my dad in the middle. Picture this. He spoke in tongues. Blah, blah, blah. Get behind thee, Satan. I mean, that's just fucked up. And thinking back, whether he was actually speaking in tongues, saying anything of note, or just blagging some twaddle that sounded unfamiliar, I'll never know. But to a sarcastic, cheeky boy of 7'8" going on 30, it was fucking hilarious and frightening all at once. So my humour was a nervous cloak, probably to cover up the overwhelming feeling of sacrificial menace, and fear that absolutely blanketed the room. It was horrible. To this day, not just because of that, many, many reasons, I've got nothing but total contempt for anything that promotes religion in any form. End of. So around this time, he's doing his God bit, but my mum got a job across the road at the Top Chippy. Top because of its geographical location in the village, as opposed to its rating on merit. No, that went to the Middle Chippy, because they did spam fritters. Oh, yes. A guilty pleasure I still do, of an occasion, like to devour. In a bread bun, bit of salt and vinegar. That'll do. So Mum's position made me a tad more popular amongst the scruffy, ever-hungry, give-us-out-for-note young breed. Yeah. Generous portions aplenty if you were my mate. And equally meagre pickings if you pissed Pauline's son off. I was popular. Now, next door to Top Chippy, there was an off-licence, which was run by an elderly, dithery couple, proper ageing. The bloke was predominantly cloaked in a long, knee-length brown overall jacket. He looked like a shit professor, to be honest. So one night, we're all tossing it off outside, troughing on our freebies, bag of scraps, you know what I mean? And I noticed that the customer who just left hadn't closed the door entirely, thus not ringing the bell. But the shopkeeper, little fella in brown coat, he's done one out the back. So he'd gone through the old, them multicoloured fly drapes that were all the rage back then. He's disappeared through there. Yeah. So it occurred to me that I could possibly go help myself. So I crept in. Fuck me, what a result. There I was, in this emporium of anything my young heart desired. Whiskey, gin, vodka, beer, confectionery, cigars, fags. Oh yeah. So what did I come out with? 2 bags of Planters dry roasted peanuts and a Caramac. But get in. First job done, on me toes, I'm out of there. This time next year, I'll be feet up in the Costa del Sol with all the other underworld criminals. Although I was too young to obtain my own passport, but hey-ho, it was official. I'd had my first successful tickle. I was on the rob. Now, I know you'll be tutting and saying that's just wrong, that's just wrong, you're pinching off people. But believe me, there is a real skill to lifting stuff. And more so nowadays, with the advent of cameras and tags. So, just for a moment, to today's shoplifters, I take my recently TK the Max stolen hat off to you. Good on you.